With Kid in the lead, we headed downstairs. We went down the stairs and continued straight ahead, eventually coming across a sturdy-looking door on our right. The corridor continued further on back toward Tay Terrace. The corridor continued further on back toward the terrace. We continued down the corridor, eventually coming across a door on our left. The corridor continued on back toward the terrace. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We took the car leading from the left-hand side of the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs. By the way, folks, if you played near a replicant, there is a text adventure bit in the game. This game is exactly that style. To which I'm wondering if this game might be designed like Japanese text adventure games. Now, I never really played any of the really old Japanese text adventure games. Because honestly, the language barrier for Japanese games gets worse the more text heavy it is. And older PC98 and PC88 era games are super text heavy. Like I kid you not, I tried to play the PC-98 Princess Maker game. Back before any official translations or Windows ports were available. And it was such a pain to try and fumble through menus. Like even I can run the game through a machine translator if they existed at the time. But I don't understand why Japanese games had this heavy emphasis on text menus. So in a game like this, you would be give like a paragraph of text, and then several options. Since there are no visual indications of which options you've already tried, or icons to indicate a cardinal direction. You might quite literally go around in circles between two locations over and over if you were not familiar enough with the language. Whereas like nowadays you can just throw in a quick emoji like right arrow. Anyway, let's continue. We took the corridor leading from the left-hand side of the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs the path. To the right led down the stairs. The path to the left was a dark side passage, and the main corridor continued straight onward. So our clue was to go back to Lynx's room, which means we need to go down the stairs and then down the corridor, away from the atrium. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into blackness as we went. At the bottom, the path split. The way to the left continued onto an atrium that resembled a sort of plaza, while the path to the right was a winding passageway that trailed off into darkness. We went down the stairs, then took the passage to our right. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the right hand side. It was Riddle's room, Lynx's daughter. We went down the dark passageway, eventually finding ourselves at a sturdy looking, immaculately polished door. It was Lynx's room. Kid's eyes lit up, gleaming in the darkness with savage anticipation. Kid opened the door and slipped inside. I knew he wouldn't be here. We started looking for any signs of the key to the vault. Maybe she can help, said Kid, thrusting her chin toward the mirror. I gently pulled the soft cloth from the mirror and stared into the glass. It was dark, like the surface of a lake at night. There's that creepy face again. What is your desire? What the heck, gang? Yeah. One detail I did read online. It said can also hurt you. And apparently this is one of the places where. And now that I see the last option, I see why. This game was clearly intended for a slightly older audience. Though realistically, nothing in the game so far would be rate teen. More like PG-13 with some violent language. Anyway, since I knew it was a text adventure, I didn't deem it necessary to switch the stream to mature. Especially since it was a Nintendo console. I asked it where the key to the vault was. Do you know where the key to the vault is? The mirror's reflection rippled and changed to reveal a room with numerous bookshelves. Incidentally. We kind of do this entire thing in Chrono Cross just without the mirror. Remember, you go up to the treasure room in disguise and they ask the password. And you just stand there like an idiot, and they let you in. A deep, sonorous voice spoke. You will find the key in the place I have revealed, the study. It is inside a book with a purple cover in the furthest bookshelf from the door. The image of the study vanished from Tame Mirror, and the voice went silent. The image of the study vanished from the mirror, and the voice went silent. My most common typo is te instead of the. And it's like the one typo that I just can't let stand. It appears Te's spirit has left for another mirror, commented Magil. To the study then. It appears the spirit has left for another mirror, commented Magil. To the study then. Gee, Kisai, why don't you just proofread? Because I type so fast that I've already hit enter by the time my eyes reread the sentence. As I made to leave the room, a low voice rumbled through the air, stopping me dead in my tracks. Be where he knows. Was it the voice of the mirror again? What did it mean? Hurry up, or we're leaving you behind, sir, called Kid from outside. Serve. Hurry up, or we're leaving you behind, Sarge, called Kid from outside. Flustered, I rushed after her. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Rattle. Kid stopped us. There's something there. I listened carefully. Rattle, 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 rattle. A figure appeared into darkness on the other side of the corridor. A figure appeared in the darkness on the other side of the corridor. Tube studio crash. Okay, let's keep going. It's a skeleton. Oh, look, Khan came back again. We readied ourselves for a fight. What was I going to do? Come on then, I leaped at the skeleton. It lashed out with its sword. Blood dripped from my face. The tip of the blade had scratched my cheek. I jumped back in panic. Hope you brought your brown trousers, grumbled Kid. We squared off against the skeleton. It threw the sword it was carrying to the ground and took a step forward. And then it twisted its body into a strange pose. Oh no, not again. This morning a viewer went TOS when the next page cameoed. It's not explicit, just use your imagination. Wait, is it doing what I think it is? It proceeded to contort itself further, adopting a shape that could only be described as highly suggestive. For a moment, no one knew quite how to respond. What the bloody heck? What should? What should we? Wait, Kid. Look at Mag. Maggle seemed completely witched. There was no way he'd be any use to us in this state. What were we going to do? Come on then. I charted the skeleton. I took advantage of the opening created when it raised its word, and kicked it as hard as I could in its lower spine. There was an almighty crack as the bone snapped and the skeleton fell in two. A split second later, Kid landed a massive blow on the top half. With its skull shattered, the skeleton immediately came to a halt. Huh, guess you can fight after all. We had defeated the skeleton. Kid turned her attention back to Magil. Can't believe this Drongo through. Can't believe this Drongo, though. Twat. She brought her fist down hard on his head. Maybe that'll wake you up now. If we're done here, let's get a bloody move on. What was I? Oh? I was doing great. I felt like nothing could stop me. Maybe you ain't such a drongo after all. Just goes to show, any old weirdo can make something of themselves if they put their mind to it. Kit's eyes glinted with mischief. Eventually, we came across an orny door on the left-hand side. Twas Riddle Room, Lynx's daughter. We continued down the corridor until we reached an intersection. There was a left turn in the corridor leading to some stairs going upward. The corridor also continued straight on toward the entrance to a large, plaza-like atrium. The passage to the stairway was short. With Kid leading the way, we started to climb the narrow staircase. At the top, we found another intersection. Take Hind Take Corridor to the right would lead us to a dead end with a large door, while the way to left led to Tay Terrace. Taking the corridor to the right would lead us to a dead end with a large door, while the way to left led to the terrace. I swear, I'm going to put a spell check in this thing. Taking the corridor to the right would lead us to a dead end with a large door, while the way to left led to the terrace. The narrow side passage in front of us was open. We headed down the side passage. At the end of it, we came to an old, immaculately polished door. This was the study. You know, for the atmosphere of this game, I'm surprising not scared. Right. Let's find this key. Light on her feet as always, Kid moved into the center for the room. Where'd the mirror say it was again? Surge. She was asking me. How was I supposed to remember? Oh, crap. Oh crap! You will find the key in the place I have revealed the study. It is inside a book with a purple cover in the furthest bookshelf from the door. Oh, I think it was supposed to be the one with the purple cover in the furthest bookcase. Do note that the mirror said from the door, not a bookcase. So I had to scroll back and check that part. Alright, let's see. Seeming to take my word for it, kid made for the case in question. Right, this is the one purple cover, aha. This has gotta be it. Kid pulled out a book from the bottom shelf. Magdill and I watched as she opened it. The pages were hollowed out, and hidden inside was an old key decorated with strange symbols. Nailed. Nice one, Serge. Kid snatched the key from inside of the book. Right time to finally get a look at this treasure. Having got what we came for, we left the study. We made our way back down the dark side passage leading from the study. Eventually, we arrived back at the intersection. Some stairs led downward, and the corridor branched left and right, with the right branch leading back toward the terrace. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. A short way along the corridor running from the right-hand side of T Terrace, we found an ancient-looking door again. On our right. A short way along the corridor running from the right-hand side of the terrace, we found an ancient-looking door again. On our right. It looked like this was the way into the clock tower. It looked like this was the way into the clock tower. We returned to creeping down the darkened hallways as silently as we could. Holy crap. I was not expecting that. A scream pierced the darkness, turning my blood to ice. A scream pierced the darkness, turning my blood to ice. I realized then that a pair of crazed blood-red eyes was staring into the depths of my soul. Oh, geez, it's a griffin. Why is it always griffins scaring me? It was a griffin. In a panic, I tried to slip the knife from my belt. but before I could draw my weapon, the griffin had spread its powerful wings and swooped toward me with an almighty screech. I was knocked back and sent rolling across the ground. I gasped with pain as the wind was knocked out of me. Surge. You okay? Every nerve in my body was screaming with pain. I held back the groans and staggered to my feet. I looked up to see the massive griffin in front of me. Its hellish red eyes stared down its beak. It was going to attack. What could I do? Almost by reflex, I ducked the attack. The griffin's talons raked through the air, plunging down toward me. Arg! A blast of pain shot through my head. Clutching at the wound, I did my best to regain my footing and turned to face the griffin again. Clutching at the wound, I did my best to regain my footing and turned to face the griffin again. As the beast's mad red eyes glared at me, I desperately tightened my grip on my knife. I reversed my grip on my knife and plunged it into the griffin's neck with all my might. Grey muck. The griffin's body contorted with agony. Driven mad with rage, the griffin shook its head this way and that. I quickly pulled my knife out from its neck and rolled away to put some space between us. Get down, Surge! Shouted Magno from behind me. Panicked, I dropped to the floor, and not a moment too soon, almost instantly, a blazing fireball sailed right over my head. It crashed into the griffin and exploded into an almighty conflagration. Greyonk. The griffin writhed in the flames, shrieking madly. And then it glared down at my prone body, its eyes filled with primal fury. It was going to attack. What could I do? Almost by reflex, I jumped back. Almost by reflex, I jumped back. But the griffin's talons were soon followed by its head. Arg! A sharp pain ripped through my waist. Clutching my wounded stomach, I did my best to regain my footing and turned to face the Green again. Clutching my wounded stomach, I did my best to regain my footing and turned to face the griffin again. As these mad red eyes glared at me, I desperately tightened my grip on my knife. I reversed my grip on my knife and plunged it into the griffin's neck with all my might. The beast screamed and contorted with agony. I'd done it. I'd landed a blow, and a telling one at that. The griffin stiffened, suddenly becoming completely rigid. Its eyes rolled into the back of its head, and it fell to the ground with an almighty crash. We did it. We defeated the griffin. I fell to my knees and breathed a heavy sigh of relief. I was starting to feel a little worse for wear. I was going to have to be more careful from now on, or this was going to end badly. Not bad, Serge, not bad at all. Didn't know you had it in ya. There was a mischievous glint in Kit's eye as she rewarded me with a few rare words of praise. Continuing on down the corridor, we came across a rather sturdy-looking door on our left. A little further on stood a stairway leading upward. Well, this door is clearly meant to keep something safe if there ain't some kind of treasure behind it. Me name ain't Kid. Sniff, sniff. Yee, that's the smell of cold, hard cash. All right, she muttered to herself as she began to inspect the door more closely. This should do it. Kit slipped the key we'd found into the lock. Lines of magical light flashed across the surface of the door and vanished as various magical barriers were dispelled. Up, down, left, right, blue, red, green, every color under the sun, and then all was quiet, and the darkness of the manor returned. Up, down, left, right, blue, red, green, every color under the sun, and then all was quiet, and the darkness of the manor returned. Right, we're in. With a creak, the heavy door gently swung open. As soon as I saw what was inside, I gave a gasp. Kid stepped inside. Woo! We've hit the mother lode. Out of the darkness loomed a veritable mountain of gold, silver, priceless works of art, and exquisite trinkets. Kid looked as if she were on the verge of drooling at the sight of it all, but what thief wouldn't have been? After all, this was the kind of hoard that few people would ever come across in their lifetime, the smallest faction of this vast mound of riches would have seen even the most careless spendthrift set for life. Our goal is the frozen flame. Ignore the rest. Michael spoke with an icy dedication to our mission. He had not even batted an eyelid at the sight that greeted us. I know. She was disappointed, of course, but she soon set about scanning the room for the object of our hunt. Wait, is that it? Look, on the pedestal over there. I turned to see what Kid was pointing at. There it was, a small yet perfectly formed jewel that gave off a pale red light, a jewel that looked like a flickering fire suspended in time. the frozen flame. Silently, Mecca walked toward the pedestal. I called out, "Wait. We have to be careful." Yeah, remember what happened in the execution chamber. You're right. This is Lynx we're dealing with, after all. It may as well be trapped. We should be on our guard. Bert, we need to be quick about this, but fine, have it your way, grumbled Kid, looking away. Magil examined the pedestal for a short while, then paused. W.H. were wise to be cautious. Placing his left hand on the base of the pedestal, he muttered an incantation, drawing quick sigils in the air with his right hand. Some glyphs appeared on its smooth surface, and for a moment blazed brightly. There! Now we can proceed. Magil calmly reached out and grabbed hold of the red jewel. This is where, like in Aladdin, the Cave of Wonders then decides to kill you. Or in Portal 2, the part where the A tries to cue. Like nothing is ever that easy except in tomb robbing films. Like even in Indiana Jones, there is an often memed scene with where Indy swaps a bag for a treasure. Dun da da da. Sir, Search and friends obtain Ditty Frozen Flame. Search and friends obtain the Frozen Flame. Phew, we managed to get what we came for without anything horrible happening to us. I breathed a sigh of relief and turned again to Majel. He was staring silently at the jewel in his hands. Magville, we did it. Let's get out of. Before I could finish, the frozen flame crumbled to dust. This flame was a fake. Lynx must be keeping the real one somewhere safe. What? Suddenly a siren rang out. The room was flooded with light, and metal bars slammed down in front of the door. I turned with a gasp to see Kid Frozen, an ornate crown in her hands and a wide-eyed look of awkward shock on her face. Oh, oh my god, says a monkey. This was kind of predictable. Da-da-da-da. Kid and friends obtained a golden crown too. You're kidding me, right? You had to go and you complete bonehead. I let rip with a stream of choice insults. In my head, that is. Metallic parrots in the four corners of the room suddenly came to life, flapping their wings and screeching. Thieves! Thieves! We're in trouble. These things are going nowhere, said Magel, inspecting the bars covering the door. Although, to look at him, you wouldn't have though there was anything wrong. The parrots. The parrots. To the vault. The vault. We heard voices in the distance. The manor guards were coming. Kid died behind a pile of gold coins. Find somewhere to hide. In a panic, I looked around the room. There was a large chest sitting wide open next to a pillar. I rushed to empty it out, then plunged in headfirst and closed the lid. Captain? Captain? There's no sign of anyone in there, no sign. Strange, peculiar, no one has ever escaped before, none have ever fled the master trap's clutches, none. I gently pushed up the lid of the chest and peeked through the gap. There were 5 goblins wearing suits of armor unlocking the gate and about to make their way inside. One of the goblins looked around the room, jerking his neck as he peered into the shadows. Captain, what if it actually was a mouse this time? Chef was grumbling about mouses the other day. Captain! A mouse. A rodent. A rat. Would a teeny tiny thing like that really have sprung the trap? Replied a stocky, plump-looking goblin who must have been the captain. He didn't seem convinced. That was when I heard a strange but oddly familiar sound from a corner of the room. Squeak! Squeak. It was coming from where Kid was hiding. Startled, the troop of goblins stopped and looked at each other. For a moment, none of them spoke. Eventually, the goblin captain rubbed his chin through his jowls and offered his thoughts. Mouses. I'm sure Chef was complaining about cats. Me. Meh. That voice again. I'm assuming these goblins are as dumb as rocks. Because it seems like nobody with half a brain cell would go, I hear a mouse, know it's a cat, and not be suspicious. Again, silence. The goblins only looked at each other. Funny you should say that, Captain. Way I heard it, it weren't mouses or cats, it was a heckran. Uh, an awkward silence followed. In my mind's eye, I could see Kid wrecking her brains to work out what a heckran was. I smell a rat, by which I mean a thief. Following the captain's lead, the guards reached for their weapons, and then, heck, ran. Surely they're not going to fall for that. Listen, I truly is a heckran by heck. That proves it. The goblin guards grinned and nodded to each other. Cheeky little devil surprised me there. Let's get out of here, boys. The goblins filed out of the vault. I breathed a sigh of relief. And then they came charging back in again with a mighty roar. There's no such thing as Hecrons. Context. Hecron is a boss in Chrono Trigger. This is the one that can only be harmed with magic. What? You sneaky little buggers, roared Kid, leaping out from behind a pile of gold coins. You're one to talk, thief. Brandishing their weapons menacingly, the goblins slowly forward, forcing Kid into a corner. I quietly eased open the lid of the coffer and slipped out. Can't leave you anywhere, can I? I muttered to myself. I knew Kayed could handle herself, but I didn't fancy her odds against a whole troop of heavily armed goblins. For a moment, I wasn't sure what to do, but then I made up my mind. Right. I had to save Kid. There was no way I was going to abandon a friend in need. Even if it meant facing off against a group of 5 goblin guards, I'd find a way to come out on top, I hoped. I drew the knife from my belt and leapt into the middle of the room. Hey, snot for brainses. Over here. The goblins all turned to look at me at the same time. Ten beady, cruel little eyes all staring daggers at me. Fool! In a hurry to die, are we? I gulped and wondered if making a run for it might have been a better plan of action after all. Odd humans are so stupid. The goblin captain chuckled and licked his teeth. Yep, this one got a death wish, all right. Why else would he be so stupid as to come after Lord Lynx's treasure? Yep, this one got a death wish, all right. Why else would he be so stupid as to come after Lord Lynx's treasure? Ha, that's a first, being called dumb by a bloody goblin. Try acting tough when you're crying to your mom later on. Judging by Kid's response, she wasn't feeling massively threatened. And you tell her it was Kid who kicked your teeth in. So you're Kid, are you? The sneaky little slippery little thief we've heard so much about? The goblin narrowed his eyes. Hey, Lord Lynx will be thanking me from now until my retirement when I bring him your head in a silver platter. The goblin captain pulled his morning star from his waist and started swinging. Be right back.